Cry It Out Loud, a podcast by Chasing the Rainbows with your host, Bernice Quisenberry.
Today's podcast episode is about embrace your own pace, and it's all about your own timeline, schedule, and routine for grief and what that looks like, and how you choose to honor your baby. And it's with Liz O'Donnell today. She is on our podcast, who is a teacher until she lost her baby, Aaliyah, and has been in a labor of love since to honor her daughter and focus on servicing our baby loss community. So welcome, Liz.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, we're so grateful to have you. I can't wait for our listeners to get to know you and what you're doing and, just a little bit about your story. So if you wouldn't mind, please share your loss story and about yourself.
Absolutely. So going back to it's so crazy how time flies for us after experiencing this. It was early June of 2020. I found out that I was pregnant, which was a total surprise, but a welcome surprise. Yeah. And, her father and I were even more excited when we found out we were having a girl. And my whole pregnancy was great. I always say that it was the healthiest I had ever been. I felt good. I was in routines, and all of this is in COVID, right? So, which was a really tough time for people. But for me, I felt like I was flourishing, honestly. Oh. So as everybody that's listening knows, when you take yourself to the doctor or you feel something is wrong and you go in, or you're going into labor and then you just hear those words, there's no longer a heartbeat. You're just completely shell-shocked. Yeah. I mean, when I was told that, I had actually taken myself to the hospital. It was just a couple days after Thanksgiving 2020. I didn't want to annoy anybody, so I didn't even tell anybody I was going to the hospital except for my doula.
No, I get
who
it.
Encouraged me because I had said, I haven't really felt her move, but I was decorating my house for Christmas all day. So I just thought, I wasn't really focused, and she encouraged me to go anyway. And so I was with one of the midwives at the hospital that I was in, and she told me we can't find a heartbeat. And at first I just sat there and I just said, "Oh, okay." Like not a natural response at all, but I was like, "Oh, okay." And then she was like, I remember her, she kind of asked me, like, "Do you understand what this means?" or whatever. And I said, "Yes." I was like, I thought this didn't happen anymore. Like, I thought, I had known, and so many people I've learned the word stillbirth is totally new to them when they have found this out. I was aware of the term and what it meant, but I didn't know it could happen to someone who was flourishing the way I was, during my whole pregnancy, where nothing was wrong. And we were both passing all tests with flying colors. So that shock, I think some days when I reflect on it, I think I'm still in that shock sometimes, as I'm sure so many people can relate to. But that night, I stayed and I tried to stick to my original birth plan as best I could, which I was really grateful that my doula and the medical providers supported that. But ultimately, I ended up choosing an epidural a couple days later. And on December 1st, I had Aaliyah. And since then, it has just been the craziest life changes that I ever could have imagined. And now I'm here with you.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. I know. And it's, you and I talk pre-show and things like that. It's like, we never want to be a part of this community. We never, want somebody else to join this community, because that means that we lost a baby. Exactly. And it really is like the trauma around everything, from the finding out that something's wrong, because you and I know that my story was like similar, where we went in and all of a sudden there was no fluid anywhere, we need to deliver immediately, kind of thing. And it really does shock you, it jolts you. But you're like
Gotcha.
almost having like an outer body experience, looking down on yourself. Like, is this really happening? Did they really just say those words to me? And then this is like the next steps. And you're almost just like operating like a robot, following what everybody else is telling you.
Oh my gosh, I was so, and I remember them asking me a couple of times if I was okay. I mean, obviously I'm not okay, right? But
Right.
I was like, yeah, like I know what I have to do next. I'm like processing it in my mind, and exactly as you just said, a robot. And I
Yeah.
do think that after experiencing this, we're still in that robot
Yes.
phase functioning to get through, because I mean, it's not a natural, order, right? Like the
Yeah.
order of death or whatever that we're, taught. Okay, when your grandparents pass away, it's because they had a nice, healthy life and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
I mean, this out of order thing,
Yeah.
you don't ever adjust to it or get
No.
used to it. And so I think to protect ourselves, we kind of have to be in that robot state,
Exactly. And I think it is just like an automatic state that our, brains go to, with the trauma. And, you're right. Like parents don't outlive their children at any stage or age. And so when that happens, all those woulda, coulda, shouldas, everything just like floods in, after almost like after the events, right? Like after we left the hospital was pretty much like all that alone time. And when there wasn't like a whirlwind of events happening around it, like, what do I do now? And, that's when like I don't know about you, Liz, but deepest in my grief and trauma.
Yeah, I would say it didn't really hit me until, also it being December 1st, it was like the rush
Ah,
of Thanksgiving. And then you have the rush
yeah,
of Christmas. And I decided to not go. Most of my family is in New Jersey. I decided to just stay here in DC on Christmas. I
yeah,
didn't want to see anyone, and that was just what I needed, which it was just her father and I. It was great. It was what we both needed, I think. But
yeah,
yeah, like, okay, after the holidays, normally in normal life, right, everyone takes a breather and you kind of hibernate for January and February, and that's where I was like, oh my gosh.
yeah,
So because it was, still so fresh and then
yes,
just so silent
yes,
all the time,
yes,
that it kind of was the catalyst for me sitting down and figuring out, okay, what do I want to do next? How can I help other people? What can I do? I'm brainstorming because I couldn't just sit and do nothing. And for me personally, just sitting and constantly thinking about the event
yes.
is not helpful for me to process. It's worse for me personally. Um, and so I tried to get to work and come up with
Yeah,
some way to honor Aaliyah. So,
yeah. And it really is your labor of love. And, just for our listeners, like what were some of the hardest things that you didn't expect after losing your daughter? I think, like the expected is that we did lose them and that we have to live this life now without them and trying to figure out what that is. That's already enough. But like all those secondary losses that no one really talks about.
yeah, I mean, ugh, I feel like a lot of people can relate to this. It definitely affected some of my relationship with friends and family.
Yes.
And I think it's always okay to not know what to say in these situations. And I tell people that all the time because I don't even know what to say. Like I feel just as weird and awkward as anybody else would in this situation. And so like not hearing from some people, thinking about it later to when some friends and family members were just so happy when I was pregnant and would be talking to me all the time. And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden it's crickets.
Yeah.
It's okay to not know what to say, but
Yeah.
to just completely, you know, ghost people after they've experienced this loss. We're already just filled with so much guilt and self-blame that we should
Yes.
not have, but is natural too,
It
right?
is. It's so natural. Right.
Yeah, to then have people that you thought loved you, loved
Yeah.
your daughter, or your child you were about to
Yeah.
have just kind of disappear. I mean, that adds more trauma.
Yeah.
Um, for me, it also had a lot to do with my job. I mean, I was teaching.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
my leave was revoked, and I had dedicated so many years of my life to helping other people's children. And then
Oh,
when I lost my own, the system decided to essentially punish me for it by revoking my leave. So, then I had the loss of the job because I ended up leaving teaching.
right.
Um, so it definitely, the secondary losses are huge.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's crazy.
I know, because like, us too, we lost like so many loved ones, family, friends, like in our circle. And it was because they didn't know how to handle this, right? Like we were still learning how to handle it, but it was because they were ghosting and all of that. But then like the work aspect of it, right? Like I ended up leaving corporate America because felt that jadedness, like, oh, you have 3 days to grieve and you have to return because your daughter's no longer alive. And it's like, what? Like, is this real life? Like, I just lost a child. And like people just don't, yeah. And I think it's the lack of knowledge because everybody thinks trying to conceive equals pregnancy equals, baby. And that's not how it is. And, it is heartbreaking. And like you said, I think you and I, Liz, sometimes maybe we don't know what to say, but at least we can still sit in silence with people or just be there for them, right?
That is it. Yes. And
Yeah.
I get so many texts from my good friends saying, just saying something. I'm thinking of you and Aaliyah today, or,
Yes.
you know, and they would always also say at the end, you don't have to respond. I just want you to know that I'm
Yes.
thinking of you. And even that is huge, just to text a loved one saying, I'm thinking about you. Don't respond, but I'm
Yep.
thinking about
Yep.
you. That means a lot. It goes a long way. Even just a simple sentence like that, the
Yeah.
impact on us as grieving parents is huge.
Absolutely. And just recognizing that we are still grieving because, it was so like people made me feel crazy for still grieving my baby. Like when they would ask me what's wrong a couple months later, if I was like all of a sudden just like break down crying, which crying is a natural reaction to grief,
Yeah.
it was like, I'm grieving my baby. Like I'm grieving for Brooke. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to like laugh or snicker about it. It's just like, are you kidding me? Are you really
No.
asking me right now, like what's wrong? Yeah.
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 It's ridiculous. And, I always say, like, what a blessing for those people to not understand,
I know. I know.
right?
Yep.
And
Agreed.
like so many other things in this world, if we just try to practice empathy and put
Yes.
yourself in the other person's shoes,
Right.
that situation,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
it could change. Yeah, it changes a lot.
Yeah, it does. It really changes you as a person, your outlook on life, who you are and just trying to figure it out from like moving forward and taking it step by step and yeah.
Yeah.
But that's why, I appreciate other lost parents like yourself who,
Yeah.
understand my journey. I don't have to over explain myself on the
No,
given. So,
oh, not
yeah,
at all. And that we should never feel like that.
right.
And but it's the reality.
Yeah.
And until, we just as a society kind of reshape the way we respond to these things, it's going to be our reality and people that come after us. And I think
Yeah.
that's kind of why I'm happy that we have both embraced this role in supporting people through that.
Yes.
Because without support from friends and family, I mean, it can really make this already incredibly tough journey just so much worse. And so to know that there are outlets to turn to from people that have walked and are walking that road is,
Yeah.
really important.
Yeah. It really is. And you're right. It is that, doesn't make you feel lonely and isolated if, you
Yeah.
have a group where you don't even have to explain yourself. You can just say and
Right.
share what you're going through and boom, they get it. Right.
Yep. Yeah.
Yep.
It's
Completely. Well, I can't thank you enough for sharing your heartbreak, and the story about, Aaliyah and what happened, and so you kind of, started to talk on it. What transpired? What did your baby girl give you like after, you
gosh.
know?
Well, a whole new life. I know
Right.
that. Um,
Right.
I feel like everything before, I just had a routine, a system.
Yeah.
And it was working, right?
Right.
Now, after everything, and as a griever, we wake up every day with a new emotion, or every day just looks so different. Whereas before, when I was with routine, now every day looks different.
Yeah.
But what I was saying earlier was, during those really dark moments in like January, February, right after she died, I was so stuck on doing something to help others. Like
Yeah.
that was my only thing. I think a lot of it is also the teacher in me. Like I always just want to help kids, like that's who I am. I'm an educator. I help people. I come up with different ways to help people. And so it was really important for me to try to figure out how to help people like us in this community. And one thing that really helped me initially, coming home, I didn't want to look at Aaliyah's memory box. I was like, I didn't want to look at that. It was not for me yet. Now I look at it all the time, but then it was not something that I could honestly stomach. Like I would feel sick. And so a lot of friends and family had been sending me like little self-care things. And I just kept thinking, oh my gosh, what if everybody that experienced this got this? It's something for you when you are at your lowest low, something for you to pull from and use. And my whole thing was to just quite literally feel something when you are so numb to everything. And I, said, okay, I want to figure out a way that everybody can get this. And then how do I do that? And so I went to a few of the really big Facebook groups that, the support groups. And I said, look, if you had self-care items given to you right after your loss, what would you have liked? And some people shared what worked for them, or some people said, I wish I had had. So I started to come up with 6 items at the time, just little self-care things. And my goal was to be able to kind of just put them all together, wrap them up, and present them to families as a form of support. And when I approached GW Hospital, which is where I delivered Aaliyah, with the idea, they were all on board. And I remember the director at the time, she's retired now, but she said to me, when I gave the idea, when I had finally got all the materials, I sent a picture, and she said, I think you're going to find that this idea of yours is really going to take off. And at the time, I don't even know. I mean, I'm trying to think. I mean, I had the name Aaliyah in Action. And so, when you ask, what has Aaliyah given me? I mean, I'm always in action on behalf of her.
Right.
All day, every day, 24/7.
Yeah.
I presented it to GW, and they were like, yes, let's do it. And so, we had just made 10 to give to GW. And then some people at GW told other area hospitals. And then those hospitals told other hospitals. And now our Aaliyah in Action self-care package program is in over 60 hospitals nationwide. So Aaliyah has given me the power to reach people through this, tangible bereavement resource that we don't really see often.
Yeah.
So yeah, she's given me a lot. It keeps me very busy.
Absolutely. I know. It's basically, you and I have talked about, like, it's our way of, like, almost parenting our
Oh my gosh, that's
that are
exactly,
here in our arms. Yeah.
exactly what it is. I call them a gentle hug from someone who knows the pain.
Yes.
I always say, this is not going to make you feel better. That is not the goal. The goal is to quite literally support you when you are back at home after you leave the hospital, or whatever setting, when you're coming back to your home and everything is so quiet and the rest of the world is functioning normally around you the way it did before, right? But you're never going to see the world the way you did before this life event. And so what can you pull from on those days when you are feeling lonely, when you are struggling? And it's so hard to use the word happy. I'm comfortable in knowing that people can pull from this resource on those really tough days,
Yeah.
because there are many of them, and they don't go away after just a couple months either.
Exactly.
Mm.
Exactly. And just based on our title, embrace your own pace, because,
Yeah,
here I am 3 years out. Here you are 4 years out from your loss, Liz, and still some days, right? Like, I still
gosh,
get those
yeah,
overwhelming feelings. I'm still processing things, needing to talk about it. And yeah, it's just like you said, getting those warm hugs from people, or distant hugs, from virtual hugs from someone that
yeah.
gets where you're at, and you don't need to justify it.
Yep, it's huge, and so, with the package, to
Yeah.
kinda add to that, we have resources to make those connections with others.
Yeah.
So, we have a card in there that has Chasing the Rainbows
Yeah.
as a support group. And I always say, especially to new hospitals that approach me, we partner with Chasing the Rainbows, and they have a daily support group, which everybody, the jaws to the floor hearing that.
Yeah.
Which is huge. We have an option for dads on there. And
Yeah.
then we also have a ton of supportive Instagram accounts that represent all different family makeups, all different types of loss. And for me, when I was in the hospital from November 28th to December 1st, I was on Instagram, like, looking for anybody that had also experienced this.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, I found, unfortunately, a ton of people have.
Right.
Um, and I always say, with these resources, it's never fun to have to Google this type of help.
Yeah.
And so to have it just be presented
Yeah.
without you having to look was also really important for me, because when you look at the, just obviously the mental health implications of the actual event, but then when you realize, oh my gosh, I have to Google support after experiencing a stillbirth, or I have to Google, groups for baby loss, like, that adds a whole nother level of
Yeah.
trauma. And so for me, it was just, in creating and implementing this program, really important for all the information to just be presented. You don't
Yeah.
have to go searching for it. Here it is. It was vetted by me. It's good. And whenever you're ready, go for it.
Yes, because that is it. It's
Yeah.
on everybody's timeline. It's what they need to connect with. It's, whatever they need. And it really is that. And it's just great, Liz, that, you're collaborating, you're partnering, you're, sharing it, because we appreciate that too,
Yeah.
because we're in this together.
Yep.
And if somebody's already doing something fabulous, why are we not just all coming together and really rallying around these fellow
That's
loss survivors who are coming after us?
No, that's 1,000% it. And that's why, when I was, thinking of what I wanted to do to honor Aaliyah and help others,
Yeah.
there are really great support groups out there.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to reinvent the wheel. I'd rather
Right.
just tell people about these really great support groups, right? And so I figured, what can I do to be a little bit different? And the truth
Yeah.
is that for me, support groups were not my thing. I
Yeah.
tried it out, a couple of different ones.
Yeah.
I just kind of realized, okay, this is not for me. But oh gosh, I guess I forgot to say, we also provide books for people.
Right.
Picking up a book. So with the package, you get a book or books, depending on your family's need. Picking up a book, reflecting on that,
Yeah.
journaling about it, that was what worked for me. And
Right.
so, again, I'm just trying to present all the options.
Right.
And then, on whatever timeline works for you as a grieving parent,
Yeah.
try one or two of them out.
Right.
Um, yeah, it's
Right.
important to have options
It
with.
really is. It really is. And that's why, like, if someone doesn't want our daily support groups, like, we have a peer mentor program, or we have trauma therapy, because it's like,
Huge.
how do you want to process your loss? And it's just like that. Like, maybe journaling will work for you. Maybe reading a book and hearing other loss survivors' stories in that, or listening to a podcast, or like,
Yeah,
it's really about the journey that the person needs. It's not like you and I, what worked for us is going to work for everybody. Right. Because, like, support group was what I was like, I need some support. Like, I need a
yeah,
village around me. And right. And that's really what I was, like, seeking and yearning for. But right, there's, like, so many different ways. And it depends on the given day too. Did you find that like some days journaling would work for me and then other days like I had to take a walk and jam out to music or like I would
Yeah.
be
Oh, yeah.
raging the next. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I totally feel that. And just like I really do always relate this stuff to me being a teacher in the classroom. In the same way
Right.
we have to differentiate for kids, depending
Right.
on what they need, is exactly what we need
Yeah.
as grievers and survivors of this type of loss. And you're right, it does change every day.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some days when I'm very open and want to talk, and then there are some days when I don't want to talk about it at all.
No.
So yeah, it really depends. And it's okay that it ebbs and flows. It's supposed to ebb and flow.
Yes. Yes. Not
Um,
supposed to be linear. It's not.
yeah,
And it, like it, I mean, everybody's different, but I mean, just for anybody listening out there for like, I'm right with you, Liz. This is not linear. Like
nope,
comes out of left field sometimes and I'm like, what is this? And it's
yeah,
new.
yep.
Yeah. Mother's
No,
Day hit hard this year. Last year it didn't as much, which is, it's not that I still don't miss Brooke or think about her, just to,
yeah.
yeah. But this year, like, man, I was like down and out for about a week and a half with it.
Yeah,
Just
and that's
different.
what happens. Like first 2 years for December 1st, I was okay. Actually the first year I had COVID, so I was kind of happy because nobody could come with me. So I was like, this is great because nobody can come here. And I was
It's probably like the only time you're grateful for that.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. And I felt so guilty about being kind of happy that nobody could come see me, but
I
that
know.
really was how I felt for year 1.
Right.
And then year 2
Right.
just kind of like slid on by. And then for me, 3 was the worst.
I
The
know.
worst. So
I know.
yeah,
It's so
just
weird.
different. And
I
that
know.
also goes to show for anyone who has not experienced this loss, it's not like, oh, it's just so hard in the beginning and then gets better. No.
No,
You don't
you're
know
right.
how you're gonna feel. You don't know how it's gonna hit you.
Yeah.
Um, and that's okay.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. Oh, well, Liz, I can't thank you enough for everything that you're doing within our community and, with us and just being alongside us because it is so important, to have, those like ambassadors and advocates behind one another in this field. But yeah, we wish that nobody needed our services. And
I
um,
say it all the time.
I know, I know, I know, because that would mean, yeah, no babies lost. And that's the goal someday, and we
That's
hope for that.
the
Yeah,
goal.
because we never want anyone to feel this pain.
No,
So,
no. And if
yeah.
you have experienced this, I mean, between Chasing the Rainbows and Aaliyah in Action, we have so many resources for people. And, I also always tell people, like, don't be afraid to reach out and send us, personalized emails and want to talk. I mean, we want
Yes.
to talk to you. So,
Yes.
never feel like, you're nervous about reaching out or anything like that.
No, and don't even have to explain yourself, we get it. You can just say, "I lost a baby." Boom, we're there, we know.
Yep.
Um, we know you, and it's not that we know your journey, we know all those things. It's like we can relate regardless of our journeys, who we are.
Yeah.
We're just alongside you, and you're
That's
right.
it.
Yeah. Oh, Liz. Well, thank you so much for being on here, for
Thanks for
sharing.
having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, thank you, listeners, for tuning in. Please subscribe to our podcast so we can help to reach more loss survivors. And we're always with you, fertility loss, pregnancy loss, and infant loss survivors. Until next time. Thanks again, Liz.
Thank you.
Bye.